A few years ago, I couldn't speak English at all. I went through everything. Online tutors, grammar drills, language app, notebook, all of it. But eventually I found a set of techniques that worked and helped me bring my English to a level where I could communicate comfortably. And the most interesting thing is this: the more complicated and boring the learning method was, the less progress I made. At the beginning, I tried to grab every possible learning opportunity. I paid tutors, downloaded every app I could find, bought notebooks and study guides, but the result was almost non-existent. Of course, I knew some words, I knew some grammar rules, but when I had to speak or understand real English, I would just freeze. And then I found a method that actually changed everything. So let's get straight to the point. There is one very simple principle in language learning. This is basically how children learn a language. They hear real speech, they try to understand what is happening, they remember words in context, and little by little they start speaking. And of course, adults have one problem. The brain no longer absorbs new information as easily as it did in childhood. But that doesn't mean adults are bad at learning languages. We can understand logic. We can choose content intentionally. And most importantly, today we have almost unlimited access to real language. Here's what I did, what gave me the biggest result, and what I would do today if I were learning any new language from scratch. First, find content that you actually enjoy. It can be TV show, movies, YouTube channels, interviews, anything with original English audio. But there is only one important requirement. It should have good subtitles. I personally watched my favorite movies like Back to the Future, Dumb and Dumber, and others. I also watched YouTube video teachers who tried to connect words with actions, visuals, and real situations. So you open a video, turn on English subtitles, and this is where the real work begins. Second step is this: when you hear an unfamiliar word or phrase, translate it and save it for future review. For example, a character says something and you do not understand it. So you translate it, and more importantly, do not rely on your memory. You need to save it. And when I first started learning English, I could spend up to 10 minutes on a single word, translating it, checking different meanings, finding examples, and manually creating flashcards took a lot of time. That's why I created my own mobile app called LingoTail, which does all of it just in seconds. You add a word, a phrase, or even a full sentence, and a few seconds later you get a complete AI-generated card. It includes all meanings of the word, translations, usage examples, and most importantly, video examples. After that, all you need to do is review your words regularly until it becomes fully locked into your memory. The app is available on the Apple Store and Google Play. Links are in the description. The third step is review. When you first see a new word, your brain starts forgetting it very quickly. But if you repeat it right before it's about to disappear from your memory, the connection in your brain becomes stronger. So at first you need to repeat it for a few days in a row, then after a few days, then after a week, and then after a month. This way words, phrases, and sentences move into your long-term memory and start coming to mind naturally when you need it. I remember my first English lessons with tutors, but honestly I remember only a few words from that time, and my associations with them are mostly negative. Notebooks, rules, pressure, and boredom. And now compare that to how to word remember through real content. You remember funny emotions, you remember intonations, you remember the scene, you remember the jokes, you remember the story. The fourth step is rewatching. I know it can be boring to watch something you've already seen, but first, your brain reinforces the material you have learned, and second, you get a very strong dopamine hit when you suddenly realize that you actually understand the language. That feeling is extremely motivating. Speaking is also a skill, and you cannot fully develop it by only understanding silently these words in your head. The materials you have absorbed needs to be spoken out loud. Early, the foundation of my speaking practice was with speaking with native teachers on services like iTalki. But today we have much more powerful tools, ChatGPT and Google Gemini. So you can practice anything in any languages with them. You can also use the speaking trainer inside the LingoTail app. All your saved phrases are added to your practice list and you can train them with AI. And one more thing is very important. If you have the opportunity, practice your English with native speakers. Because native speakers have different pronunciation, different melody of speech, and different feel for natural phrasing. So, if you want to sound closer to real spoken English, you need to get used to it as soon as possible. And if you're learning British English, it's better to practice with British native speakers. If you're learning American, you need to practice with Americans. And like I said, you can practice your English with AI and ask it to speak with any kind of accent. So the final cycle looks like this. Watch content, save on familiar phrases, repeat them, speak them out loud. Ideally, add at least 5 or maybe if you're actively learning English, 10 words per day. I'm not one of those people who say that grammar does not matter, but I think many people just misunderstood its role. Grammar should not be the foundation where you painfully build every sentence from scratch in your head. Instead, grammar helps you understand why something is said one way and one another. But the point is, real speech should not come from endlessly assembling grammar like a construction set in your mind. It should come from recognition and familiarity from living patterns. This is when the language starts becoming alive. And probably the final key element is full immersion. At some point, English has to stop being just a 20 minutes language lesson and start becoming part of your environment. I switched everything I could into English. My devices, social media, TV shows, movies, everything. And that was the moment when my English started growing very fast. First, you need to choose content that feels alive and interesting for you, but not very difficult. For example, if you're starting from zero, you probably should not begin from TV shows like Prison Break or Simpsons. Second, do not try to say every single unfamiliar word. It overloads you very quickly and kills motivation. You should say what actually has value. The goal is not to build a giant warehouse of random words. The goal is to build a useful and working vocabulary. It doesn't work when you study for 5 hours one day, then do nothing for a week, and then try to catch up again. Even if it's only a little bit every day, but regularly. That consistency is what eventually creates the moment when you suddenly realize that the language has become part of you. Thank you guys so much for watching and see you in the next video.